would you do if false information about you began to spread online? Well, unfortunately, people are having their reputations jeopardized as they spend more time on the internet and specifically sharing personal information on social networks. And no one knows this better than Wyer, who actually faced a federal lawsuit after his reputation and business were destroyed by online rumors. And he is joining us now by way of Skype to talk about his experience, his journey to restoring his own reputation, and how he is now helping others deal with similar issues. Thanks for talking with us, Stephen.
Thanks for having me.
You're very welcome. Well, your background is actually in finance and marketing. You built 3 companies, were recognized as a successful business leader, but then something went terribly wrong. So can you start off by just telling us your story and what happened to your reputation?
Well, if I explain it simplistically, I was involved in litigation. And of course, with all litigations, documents are filed with the courts. In my situation, the documents filed with the courts made their way quickly to the internet, and many of the allegations in those documents proved to be absolutely false. Unfortunately, by the time that conclusion was drawn by the court, the information was all over the internet, and it had negatively impacted my business significantly.
And I understand that the companies were shuttered as a result?
We ended up having to close the company I was involved in. We found it very challenging to retain clients and obtain new business. Of course, the thing about internet slander is that when someone finds something on the internet about you or your business, they never pick up the phone and call and ask to find out if it's true or not. They simply draw a conclusion based on what they've read and make their decision accordingly.
Well, what was the next step for you? I mean, I'm sure that you saw that the internet wasn't going away, so how did you start rebuilding your reputation?
Well, that's a good question. My background was in financial services. I was a principal of a broker-dealer, had all of my insurance and securities licenses, and had lived in that world for several decades. Fortunately, I also had a background in software and took an interest in the internet. I hired a team of people, and we began a process to learn on our own how to address the issues on the internet, how to influence them. We were successful in dealing with that for the information online about me. And about the time I finished that, I turned around and there were 1 million other people just like me. Small businesses, professionals, doctors, all kinds of people from Wall Street, and they all have the same issue. Information that was partially true or absolutely false that was on the internet, and they didn't know what to do about it.
Well, and today you actually run a business called Reputation Advocate that helps others deal with these very issues. But why did you feel so compelled to focus on this own sensitive area of your life as a career choice?
Well, you know, if you're served lemons in life, you make lemonade. And I found out that what began as embarrassment for me, I was right there with business people all over the United States and challenged to figure out what to do about it. Once we found solutions and once we understood how it needed to be addressed, it was a logical step to go out and offer that opportunity for others. We've grown, we've doubled every year that we've been in business. We doubled last year, and it looks like we're going to double this year. So clearly the issue is not going away.
Well, do you think that search engines are at all to blame for this problem? I mean, do you think that they need to be better in providing more accurate information?
I don't think that search engines are to blame. You know, by definition, a search engine is nothing more than an algorithm evaluating variables. If I were to look in the direction of probably areas of weakness as it relates to this, it would fall clearly on the federal government. There is a very, very narrow body of law that governs this issue. There's very little case history as it relates to slander and online misrepresentation. And the laws that are currently in place basically protect the internet service providers, and yet they leave us as the population unguarded and almost virtually unable to defend ourselves. And that's what Violated Online, the book, is all about. It really is just stories of people that we've helped, stories that, as I say in the book, you can't make up because of the things that have happened to people online. And what we do is we try and, the information has been changed, the names have been changed, but we share the stories and what we've done to help resurrect or adjust or influence the search results for those people.
Well, it's clear that most people feel more at liberty to speak online and in a way that they wouldn't offline. But how do you distinguish between freedom of expression and then online slander?
Well, it's a very good question, and it's hard to delineate that line. I think the challenge that we have is that when we do searches, if there's a derogatory statement about an individual or a business in the meta tag or in the first couple of lines of content, most of the time people will take that as truth and move right through the process. That's not an issue for the search engine. It's an issue of the reader, the person doing the search, being prudent enough to read it and see if it rings true. If a complaint or a derogatory comment is filed by Mickey Mouse or George Washington, then clearly it might bring that comment into question. But many times readers don't do that. And so the information taken at face value is what people go with. And the challenge for small business in America is that when that occurs, you're never able to determine how much business you're losing as a result of that. How many clients did not come to you as a result of that? How many people have read that review, read that comment, read that blog, taken it at face value, and moved on?
Well, where do you think the problem starts? I mean, can it just start with one negative comment on a post, or I guess when do you know that it's really bad?
Maybe a way to begin to answer that question is to speak to what might be done proactively by anyone. And so the first thing I would say is be aware of what's online about you, about your business. When you read something derogatory, you'll quickly be able to determine, is it a review site? Is it a comment site? Or is it just low-level derogatory comments and outright slander? If you can evaluate that, you'll quickly know whether you have an issue or not. If it's on Google Local or Yahoo Local and it's a complaint about service, you can evaluate what's been said. If it's on a slander site, and there are literally hundreds of them now, then you might look more closely because you may have an issue. One of the problems with slander sites is that they will duplicate content. And so what starts out as a single complaint may have that content cut and pasted into multiple slander sites. And so the end result is that your search results may have 2, 3, 4, 5 complaints on page 1 of your search, and all of a sudden it appears as though there's a systemic issue as opposed to an isolated single blog of slander.
Well, what are some of the most common problems that you see in regards to reputation being slandered online?
I suppose they fall into 3 or 4 categories. The first is very straightforward, and that would be legal documents, documents that would be found in a courthouse that are rapidly being taken online over the last several years. City, county, state, and federal courthouses are scanning those documents and putting them online, getting rid of their file rooms and paper, and so consequently that type of information is more readily available to the public. It used to be that you would have to go to the courthouse to get that information. So clearly that's an issue. There's a lot of embarrassment that can come out of documents of that nature. Right. The second would be consumer reviews on review sites, Google Local, Yahoo Local, City Search, Yelp. Those types of sites all offer an opportunity for anyone to offer a review or comment about a service. So in the retail sector, restaurants, hotels, rental car companies, all those types of service businesses all stand the opportunity to have one or more negative reviews. And the unfortunate part about those sites is there's no way to review them prior to them being posted. So the best scenario that you have is to simply file a rebuttal, and at that point you've got an online dialogue going, which may serve no one well. The third type of site is probably the most challenging, and I think of them as predatory slander sites. And these are sites that are built under the guise of being forums and bulletin boards. These sites disclose plainly up front that they make absolutely no attempt to validate any of the information or claims that are made about anyone or any business. And so when you read something, it's information that largely is unfiltered. It attacks very personally. It uses insults and derogatory language, and really serves absolutely no true consumer purpose. These sites operate under the guise of consumer protection, but they're very thinly veiled. Their purpose is mainly to generate click-through traffic and sell advertising, and that's the revenue model for those sites. There's one site alone that has over 600,000 complaints against small business in the United States. And now one of those complaints has been validated. So I could go on and on because there are many, many examples of things that come into us every day, but certainly those are good broad categories.
Right. Well, what role has social media sites played in all of this?
Social media, as it relates to online slander, is largely misunderstood, and I can speak very directly to a simple example. We're contacted on a regular basis by people that have had information placed on their walls on Facebook from their network of friends. And you may be familiar with Facebook to the extent that you know you can include friends of friends. And so you'll turn around and have hundreds or even thousands of people that are your friend. And at the point that derogatory comments are being made about you, you are challenged. And what people may not understand is that those sites those walls are considered private, and so there's really no way to influence search results because the issue is not search related. It's content related, unique to one site. So the comment that is offensive is not found in general search, but it's found on the Facebook wall. And so now I'm embarrassed because my 1,000 friends have seen this comment, this unkind statement that's been made about me by one of my friends. I can unfriend them, but clearly I've got an issue. The other thing that's really interesting about social media, even in the last 3 months, is things like Google Plus and likes and the different dynamics that are at play right now in terms of social media rating are really influencing search engines. And clearly that's expanding, and it's going to continue to be more and more valuable.
Right. Well, you mentioned a federal law a little bit earlier and how you would like to see this occur. Where are we with that, or has anything been proposed at this point?
You know, the challenge with regulation from a legal perspective really comes down to where do you begin. If I am slandered in my hometown newspaper, it's easy for me to address. The person has identified themselves, and it's a local newspaper, and so I know what court I can file my documents in. With the internet, it's much more complex. The company that is slandering me happens to have their servers in Eastern Europe, and the derogatory content is placed in North American search results for my company. It's a very good question. Where do you begin? Even if you go through the expense and the time and the process to go before the courts and get a takedown demand, that takes months, sometimes years, and every day that ticks by, the damage is being done. So even if somebody removes content that has slandered you, it may be up for 6 to 12 months. You've gone through the expense and the effort and the energy to get before the courts. And as I said before, there's a very, very narrow body of law that exists right now as it relates to all of this. So I don't see anything changing in the near future. Again, I'm not an attorney, but very familiar with a number of cases that have come before the courts. And every once in a while, an individual or a small business will prevail. Mm-hmm. But it's the exception, not the rule. And most of the time, it's not economically viable for people to take that course of action.
Okay, then. Well, Stephen, thank you so much for sharing your story with us. And it's good to hear that you have been able to turn your reputation around online.
Well, thank you very much. We're very fortunate, and appreciate the opportunity for the interview.
Absolutely. And to learn more about reputation management, you can check out Stephen's book called Violated Online, which is available on Amazon, or you can visit his site at reputationadvocate.com. With this WebProNews report, I'm Abby Johnson.